What's up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I am back with another figure review. This time we are looking at the Ultra Act Ultraman Ginga figure. I picked this up around my birthday, actually, so I've been sitting on this review and these pictures for a while, but anyone who knows me knows I'm a fan of tokusatsu, and I grew up watching Ultraman, so I'm kind of choosy about my Ultraman figures, and the Ultra Act series seems to be a really good representation of the the Ultraman characters and mythos and all that good stuff. I will be getting a regular Ultraman very soon, and then I will of course do a review. I don't really want that many Ultraman figures. I only want a few. So you've already seen Gridman, and now we have Ginga. I tend to lean towards the more armored types. They have cool designs on their armor, and they're not just the rubber suit, just because it's just another dimension of sculpt and character that the figures have, and it just looks better. It's more interesting to look at than just some fancy silver lining on the costume. So Ginga has crystals kind of infused into his design. He's got an interesting pattern of silver all over his costume. The crystals in the TV show actually change colors depending on the situation or the attack or whatever. And I'm assuming that in the future they're going to probably release packs, or if they're going to do anything, effect packs that have the different colored crystals for the different situations. Not that I need that sort of thing. I really don't care about that kind of stuff. But I've heard people mention that that's something they would like, and I'm assuming if I know collectors, it's something that they would kind of ask for to give a little bit more, life to the figure. Me, honestly, I'm cool with him the way he is. I think they did a really good job. All I want them to start doing, like I've said in all my import figure reviews, is make these figures out of the same ABS as, say, our Masters of the Universe Classics or DCUCs or, your Super RHF figures. And then we got a 100% winner. So let me get into why this figure is awesome. So what we have here is a very faithful, what's the word I'm looking for? A recreation, a very faithful recreation, right down to the paint of the Ultraman Ginga character. It's what you expect from Bandai and their SH Figuarts offshoots. You got superb sculpting, superb paint, and I mean they're really simple color schemes to begin with. It's usually red, silver, yellow for the eyes, and then one other color somewhere on their costume, and then there's the effect colors. So for him to have this super hot red, then all the rest are cool colors. It's kind of nice because it gives you kind of an impression of power. He's a very powerful character. Now the show is kind of corny, you know what I mean? Like the plot just pisses me off, so I'm not even going to talk much about the show, but I dig the design, and I could imagine a million things to use him, or a million ways to use this character that would be better than that TV show. So I'm not going to mention it much, but if you've seen the show, you know that everything that you're looking at is dead on. It's one thing, like I said, if it's coming from, Bandai or SH Figuarts or whatever, it's gonna look good. It's gonna look the part. This is why I'm done with most American figures. There's a handful that I'm still collecting, well, a couple, but I'm done with them because I like my accuracy, If it says Ultraman on the box, I want it to look like Ultraman. I don't want it to look like some other person's version of Ultraman, unless that's what I'm buying it for, Here, everything is sculpted to perfection. Even the transparent parts, nothing looks cheap. The colors look well made. They pick the right kind of plastics, especially for the transparent parts, so that when they sit on top of the silvers, it kind of pops. You know what I'm saying? And it looks deep. It doesn't look like you can see what's behind it. There's only a few areas, and I wouldn't even say there's top, but there are areas where you can tell that the suit, probably in real life, has design work like under the helmet, and all that kind of came through on this figure, but it looks good. And I'm not complaining. I mean, every little thing down to the spine on his back where the zipper is hidden, it's all here, and it looks really, really good. I mean, look at how much design work is going on his back. And they captured all that shit, and it looks so good. There's really not much that they left out. There's nothing they left out, really. And they managed to sculpt a lot of things around the joints and, you know, sculpt the joints. How do I put this? They sculpt everything in a way that the joints kind of work along with the rest of the sculpt. And it seems like a lot of things were carried over from what you saw with Gridman, because he had a lot of armor. He probably has the most armor in comparison to all the rest of the Ultramen. Even though I know officially he's not an Ultraman, he's still a Suriyaba character. So he has like an Ultraman-ish design. But you see how like the armor works into the undersuit. It works with it, you know. There's the big chest piece, and then of course there's the, you know, the boots that come all the way up to the top of his thighs, and, you know, it just, everything seems to kind of work together for the better of the figure. So wherever there's joints, it doesn't, except for maybe the elbows, it doesn't really look bad. It doesn't look like, you know, when you look at certain Marvel Legends, you're just like, shit, man, all these joints kind of take away from it. Like the old school Toy Biz Marvel Legends, some of the Spider-Man figures, you know, with weird joints. Actually, the Amazing Spider-Man that we just got from Hasbro, as awesome as it is, those joints kind of take away from it. But anyway, like I said, the design elements are very similar between these two. You have a lot of armor plating, you have a lot of, like, you got your head pieces, you've got, you know, the instead of a forehead jewel, Ginga has like a whole crown piece, you know, up top. And on many of the other Ultramen, that fin and the elements on his forehead are usually just, you know, different colored, you know, frills, I guess, you know, for lack of a better word, different colored, you know, details that just add to the facial design, you know, and kind of separate him from the other Ultramen. So, you know, you've got the yellow eyes, so you can tell they're a good guy. You've got the mouthpiece that's really similar amongst many of the Ultramen, if not all of them. So, you know, I dig him. As far as size, he's a little bit taller than your DCUCs, way taller than your Super Robot Chokogen figures. I just like that he's in between your DCUCs and your DC Directs or DC Collectibles. He is a little bit bigger than your SH Figuarts, which you'll see in a second because I put him next to a bunch of my Kamen Riders. But here are, you've seen him next to Servo or Gridman. Here he is next to another Bandai product, which is that Lion-O from the Thundercats Classics, and they're about the same height. He's almost the same height as, well, he's pretty close in height to Count Marzo from Mattel. So he's a pretty tall figure. He's much taller than your SH Figuarts, but he's right neck and neck and, you know, shoulder to shoulder with your SICs. So, you know, overall, he's a pretty tall figure. Now, the thing that I was really, really, really kind of like hoping for is that he's taller than most of my smaller mecha figures, because I have a lot of Bandai mecha figures, you know, stuff from Power Rangers, Super Sentai, etc., etc., and he's kind of in between, which is cool because then it adds to the fact that the man-made vehicle, you know, mecha type stuff, they're small ones, and then the powerful ones are huge, you know what I mean? So that kind of helps make him a little bit more, you know, like yeah, real believable, you know, as a living giant being. Now, one thing about import figures is they give you accessories out the wazoo, because there's a number of things that these characters do, you know, in their TV shows or video games or wherever they come from that you would want to recreate with the figure. It's the number one thing that's missing from 95% of American action figures, and once again is a reason why I'm sticking here and I'm spending more money and I'm focusing on these guys. Dude comes with so much, and it's all like necessary, you know. Ultramen do some very specific things. You know, they wrestle, essentially. It's like wrestling and karate. So there's certain stances and certain types of hands that you need. You need chopping hands. You need gripping hands, like about to grip stuff. You need the classic Ultraman, you know, ready stance. You know, you need their finisher blast, you know, the finisher wave, or whatever you want to call it, vortex blast, whatever. You need that part, you know, that effect part, and all those things are here, and they're well done. There's like no issues, and, you know, I have no issues with any of the parts. Even putting the parts on, you know, and taking off other stuff, it all works perfectly. I love the fact that on his finisher wave you have a hand that it's connected to that you have to replace, you know, onto, you know, you take off one of the existing hands and put that on the other hand, and he can do the move. You know, it's pretty awesome, which is a little bit different from how you do it with Gridman, which I will get into later. But they didn't skimp anywhere. None of the paints look bad. None of the plastics look bad. Nothing is made of cheaper material than what we're used to. In fact, some things on here feel like they're a little bit stronger, but like they're made of a different plastic that's a little bit more durable. So I wasn't as afraid when I was changing things as I was with Gridman. Now here's something that's vital that you have to have for an Ultraman, and it's his warning crystal. Usually when Ultraman is running out of energy or he's really severely damaged or something, his crystal, I don't know if they're called, I know on Gridman it's called a diode crystal, but I don't know what it's called. I don't remember what it's called on all the rest of them. That's a detail I haven't been watching much Ultraman lately, so I can't tell you what that is. But anyway, their chest crystal usually glows, you know, yellow or blue or something, you know, like a color that doesn't say danger. But this guy comes with, and I think some of the other ones do too, it comes with a removable, you know, crystal, so you can switch out the standard blue or yellow, I think it is, for the red, the danger, so you know something is up. And I think that's awesome, because that's a little tiny detail that if you're going to be playing around with an Ultraman, you need to be able to, you know, do that, because it's common. All these Ultraman shows have that episode where he's getting his ass whooped, or they have a couple episodes where the threats are getting more powerful, and it's usually right before he figures out some extra mode or something, or he gets some extra weapon that helps make him more powerful. But you need it if you want to recreate that stuff. I'm glad they put it in there. Yeah, it's like a bluish color. Then there's the chopping hands that he can get into the old school kind of ready pose. These are cool because, like I said, karate and wrestling, you know, judo and wrestling, or karate, judo and wrestling, you know, the Ultraman style is really specific. A lot of chopping, a lot of jumping attacks, a lot of body slams and shit, and a lot of chopping, you know. Since Ginga's a little bit more dynamic, though, I like these hands. They make that ready pose look that much better. It's just cool when the company understands the character enough to allow for all these parts to make the experience complete. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna pay $40 for a figure, you know, or $30-something for a figure, then every attack that this character does should be, you know, included in that package. You know, you should have some way to recreate all those attacks. Like the Ginga sword, or saber. It's kind of cool that they put this in here. It looks like just energy shooting off of his hand, but in the show, it's actually a blade. It's like an energy blade with like it almost looks like a fireball on the end of it. And you can remove one of the crystals on his forearm, and you just peg this in, and it holds perfectly. I was playing with it for a while one day when I think the day actually when I did these photos, I had him fighting Grizzlor, you know, and I'm making them go back and forth with their swords and stuff, and nothing fell off, and it didn't even feel like this effect part was gonna break. So if you choose to play with your figures and make them actually have some type of contact or something, or if he happens to fall off your shelf, he doesn't feel like one of the ones that's gonna break unless he falls directly onto like fucking marble floor or some shit, you know what I mean? Then you really have to worry. But the little gradation in the coloring of this plastic. It's kind of a prismatic plastic, so it goes from like lavender to like clear to like white to like sky blue, and it's beautiful. It actually looks really good. It doesn't look cheesy. It doesn't look cheap. I'm not afraid that this thing is going to fall apart. And you know, like I said, this is what you're looking for with these guys. And as long as you have the right pair of hands, and I actually think any of his hands would look good in the poses that would, you know, require this. If you're going to have him using the sword, then you could put any hands on there and it will still look good, you know, as long as he looks like he's ready to do something. And this is what I like, is having the option, you know, pieces play together, you know, well with the other parts of the figure, and it makes things look good. You know, on my shelf I can have him doing a number of things. Right now I just have him in a stance, him and Gridman, but I mean, look at that. That looks official, you know. I'm glad to see this kind of thought being put into these figures. And I mean, this isn't Bandai's first rodeo, so they've been doing this for years, and they do exactly what's necessary for you to recreate the experience of the character in the show, you know, and I love that. Here's their finishers. I love the fact that, you know, obviously in the show, different Ultramen have different colored finishers with different effects and whatever. This actually looks really good. I was going to shine light directly on him so that it could go through that transparent plastic and really give it a glow, but I was like, you know, I'll use regular light so that you guys can actually see it. It's got like a kind of sparkly finish, or sparkle. There's little crystals inside of the clear plastic, so it gives off this kind of shimmer, and I really dig that. It actually looks really good, especially once you get the right kind of light on it. Then you get these little sparkles and whatnot. It just looks good, and it's completely different from what you had with Gridman, whereas Gridman had more of a digital type thing with these chunks, these like rectangular chunks in the beam, in the blast. But you know, it's cool, and it's not very heavy, so if you pose him, his arm will not drop. The same thing went for Gridman. I'm hoping for like Zero and Zafi and the others, it's the same way. I'm assuming it is. The bad part about this, where like on Gridman, where you see those spiky parts, if you tend to drop it, or you drop something on it, you're gonna break off all those parts. So you got to be extra careful. Like, I keep these things all together in the same box, but I keep that piece on the top of everything else because I don't want it to get crushed. But they're just beautiful parts. They made a good they made a good decision to use the cheaper, lighter plastic, color it, and then, you know, use it for the effect piece, and I like that. Now on his back, you'll see this little square piece down, you know, by the small of his back, and it's pretty cool because that piece allows for use of the ability for you to use the Tamashii stages. You pull out that chunk, you have this recess, and you put in this extra piece that you saw in the accessories, and it gives you kind of a plug for you to actually put the stage in there. It kind of works with Revoltech stages as well, although it's very loose. So if you want him propped up in the air, you're gonna have to work at it. Now you'll see in some of the pictures that I took, I have him airborne, and I really had to rely on his weight in certain areas, you know what I mean, so that he wouldn't just flip over and fall off the stand. But it's a really cool, well done, you know, little addition, because some people don't like the clip stands, you know what I mean, where they clip around the waist of the figure. So by having it in their back, kind of like you would with Revoltech figures and, you know, as some of the SH Figuarts, it allows for better images where you can hide the actual stand. And if the stand happens to be clear, it just works out better. Now, articulation. This is where the figure really shines. I don't think... Let me think real quick before I say this. There is one area that you might run into some difficulty with posing this figure, because just by design, I guess since those things aren't fixed, they will kind of get in the way if you try to, you know, overextend him a little too much. But besides that, this guy, it just like dynamic poses are what these guys were created for. It's like Bandai does this better than just about anybody, and it's amazing to me that so many people here in the US don't really get it. I mean, there's a lot that do, but I just mean so many people will pay inflated prices for a Marvel Legend, and most of them can't do the dynamic things that these guys do, and these are live action TV characters as opposed to comic book characters where they're as dynamic as the artists can make them. You know what I'm saying? So this guy's got double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, double jointed thighs. Like his thigh joint actually has two pieces to it, because you can kind of pull it down to extend it, just like with the SH Figure Arts. He's got a diaphragm joint and a like a waist joint as well, so that you can actually twist and you can crunch, you know. So he's got like a segmented, it's a triple jointed, you know, pecs, midsection, crotch, so you can actually kind of bend him in any direction, so it makes most moves, especially kicks, look more natural, and crouching poses do too. He's got a swivel in the bicep, as well as a hinge a swivel in the bicep. He's got the double jointed elbows, then he's got the swivel in the wrist as well as the hinge. In his shoulder, he's got the double jointed ball socketed shoulder, where it's you have the shoulder and it's connected to a barbell, and then the barbell goes into a ball socket joint, and you can actually rotate the shoulders, you know, they move inside of the socket, kind of like on some of the Kamen Rider figures. Actually, Fies is one of them that definitely does that. His feet, you have the his ankles, you have the swivel, and you have the hinge, so he can point his toes. But if you twist the foot and twist the ankle in different directions, you can kind of get a what do they call it, a ankle pivot, which I like, and it's a little bit more natural here because the wrists are the same way. You can kind of get a what's the word I'm looking for? You can twist the ball socket that the hands go on. You can twist that in one direction, and you can twist the hand in another direction. So if you wanted to get a sideways, like, you know, horizontal chop, or a, you know, an upward, like an uppercut, you could still pull that kind of stuff off, because the hands will allow for, you know, further emoting in those poses. And it's perfect. I mean, that's what you would expect, you know? Now, one thing that I wanted to point out that makes me super happy, with Gridman, I had to suffer through 2 Gridman figures breaking before I could, you know, when I was trying to take the hand off so that I can put the other pair of hands on them. Here, for some reason, it's like they used a different type of plastic, and even though I think this joint kind of sucks, and I would prefer the reverse, like with the SIC figures, where the peg is on the actual individual hands, and it's a big ball socket, this kind of works here. For some reason, the plastic is stronger, and you don't have to really be scared when you're taking these things off. I don't want to have to heat them up every single time that I actually, you know, play with the figure and want to switch out his hands. So typically I kind of go the American route, quote unquote, where I put one fist and one splayed open hand on, so that I don't really have to worry too much about switching them out that much. But if I did want to switch them out, I won't have the kind of issues that I had with Gridman, you know, and I've already switched them out, you know, as of this review hundreds of times, just to kind of get a feel for the way things work. And I didn't have any issues at all. None whatsoever. So I'm really happy about that. It makes me happy because, you know, I don't have to be afraid that the money I spent, because, you know, I bought this one at the comic book store, and this was the only one he had. So I can't take it back and be like, hey, you know, whatever. And plus, because of the DCUC stuff, he doesn't do returns anymore. He lost too much money. But anyway, this is the area, though, that I was telling you about that is the one problem when it comes to your articulation, and it's the shoulder pads. But the shoulder pads themselves are on a hinge that kind of sits on the outside portion of his shoulder, and you can, it's a ball socket, So you can move the shoulder pad out of the way, and you also can, you know, bend the actual peg itself on the hinge. So it's kind of cool because, you know, you can find a way if you want to move that thing out of the way. It's just not very intuitive when you are moving, excuse me, the arms themselves, and then you want to pose him. You have to just look out for this and be prepared for this before you put him in the pose. Overall, this figure is just, it's quality. It's a joy to have. It's one of those things where you just don't really need anything else, you know? The one thing I would say that I would have liked is a stand, but I have stands, you know, in the house, so it's not an issue. I like the fact that you know, he's kind of light, so it's easy to put him on a stand and not worry about him. I like the fact that, you know, the translucent plastics, I'm not usually a big fan of translucent plastics unless it's compound eyes on a Kamen Rider. I think those are perfect, or unless it's like an effects part, you know what I mean? And these crystals kind of serve both purposes. They're kind of like effects parts, but they're also part of the sculpt, you know what I mean? So I don't have an issue with them. It's cool that they're there. I like the fact that he is well painted, you know? I mean, and anyone would. You want your figures to be well painted, so this isn't just a bias, you know what I'm saying? It's, you want your figures to be well painted, and here he is. He's well painted. I also have to give him props for the fact that the sculpt work and the articulation work really well. Granted, most of the Ultramen have the same base body. It's still dope to see the differences that they add on to separate each character and keep them their own character. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not often that you see a line where the majority of the characters have the same body and they still engineer each one individually so that there's things about them that separate them from the rest in the same line. So if you're a fan of tokusatsu, if you're a fan of Ultramen in general, this is one of the ones you should get. He's got a really unique design, really awesome paint job. Not that any of the Ultra Act figures or SH Figure Arts have shitty paint jobs. The paint jobs are almost always great. His articulation is great. The accessory count is just fine. It's like the perfect amount. And he just looks good on your shelf next to any of your other characters. You know what I mean? It's just, it's another superhero. If you love superheroes, you know, you kind of owe it to yourself to have at least one Ultraman in your collection of heroes, you know, represent for Japan, you know. I think, you know, being a fan of Ultraman, my love of Ultraman doesn't blind me from some of the whack shit that has come in the form of Ultraman. So, you know, if this was a whack release, I would have told you. There's nothing really whack about this figure. Apart from the show itself being corny, the figure is a really well done figure. Every aspect of the figure is top notch, and he puts a lot of other figures on the market to shame. I love his coloring, like the paint job. The sculpt is perfect. I mean, I'm repeating myself, but I have to go through and you know, reiterate what it is that I'm paying for. You know, the sculpt is great. The articulation is great. The effect parts or the accessories are great. The count for your accessories is great. It's just, and it's well engineered for the most part. You know, the only gripe I have is the shoulder pads, and the character just has shoulder pads. I would have preferred that they made the shoulder pads part of the sculpt, or put the shoulder pads on his upper shoulder on a hinge, so that when you move his arms, you could kind of move them out of the way. But it's a great figure, and you know, you would, I think you'll all enjoy it. So I'm Strident. It's my story, and I'm sticking to it. This has been my review of the Ultra Act Ultraman Ginga, and that's it for me. You've been great. Peace outside.